so I'd been reading a lot of Pagan Portals, and I remember reading Gwyn ap Nudd by Daniel Forrest and Thor by Morgan Daimler, and I was like, I love these books. What I loved about it was the very clear connection between the writer and the deity and the length of that. And I thought, well, okay, one of these would be quite fun. Who do I know about? And I didn't know about anybody because I was fresh out of Bardic school and I hadn't really got very far along the path. But I'd heard this name, Artio, from one of my friends, and they'd shared like a couple of like memes and things. And I was like, okay, well, and I knew Artio was Berne Germany. So I was like, okay, I will write about Artio. That's what I'll write. And then I looked at because if you read something like Thor by Morgan Daimler, there is tons of evidence in there, like physical evidence of Thor. So I thought, okay, well, let's start by looking at the actual physical evidence for Artio, and it's about 5 things. I was like, well, that's not going to get me very far, is it? Which was then what made me bring Artaois in as well, because people were, I had the Druid Oracle deck, the animal deck, and they were talking very confidently in there about Artaois. And I was like, okay, so there must be loads of evidence for this other one. On inscription. So I'm kind of with this, looking at this book going, how do I do this? And the answer was the fact that there wasn't much, and the answer was that I didn't know much. So it was about that journey of getting to know this God that had in a way reached out to me. There was a moment where I was going, I'm awful at traveling, having said he's been on the Trans-Siberian, but I'm not good at leaving home. I'm very connected to my home. And so I was going away to Glastonbury for a few days, and I just was thinking, okay, I would asking someone, anyone, please look after my home. Please look after my boys who are about to leave here, my cats. Please look after Bex. Just look after my house, please, somebody. And I kind of had this vision in my head of an enormous bear standing over my house and kind of roaring. And it was like, oh, that's protective. That's very protective. And then I thought, that must be Artio. That must be this bear god that I've been hearing about. And so joining all of that together and then going, right, that's a journey. I've got to go. Rather than talking about Artio as somebody I know, I will talk about Artio as a being that I am getting to know. And so that's what the book is about.
Oh, yeah, it comes across as a personal journey, which makes it, I think, even more fascinating because we travel along with you, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and that had to be the narrative, because in some ways I didn't know what I was going to discover 5 months down the line into writing this book. I kind of literally had an experience, wrote about it, and decided where I was going to go next and write about it that way. And then kind of end up tying it all back once I was kind of putting that final draft together.
So you did literally travel. You did go on a real journey, not just a spiritual one. You went on a physical one as well. How did you decide where you were going to go? Because I know in the book you seek out a particular bear statue in Berne. Was that your actual, right, that's where I'm going first? Or was there another destination?
The original, because when I looked at the evidence, and I'm quite a visual person, so I mapped it onto a map of Europe of where the evidence for Artio was. And my initial idea was to travel between the places. So at the beginning of the book, I do kind of take a from Britain across Europe to Berne kind of narrative. And I was going to do that. I was going to go to all of the places and look at all of the inscriptions. But I found some of them very, very difficult to track down. So I thought, well, that's possibly not the best thing to do. But the statue of Artio that's in Berne kind of struck me as something that I had to see rather than looking at it online. Because when you look at it online, the picture is always the same. It's always kind of side on. And I wanted to kind of go to the actual statue and sit with it and circle it and just be with it. I mean, the Celts believed that the closest you could get to a god is in the statue of a god, because they resided in the statue. So as a druid, that seemed like a good thing to do, to actually get as close to that goddess as I possibly could. So the other ones kind of dropped away, and it kind of became quite clear that the place I had to go was Berne, to go and see the statue. And of course, Berne means bear. Yeah. So it was like, oh, okay, right. Yes, I'm going to the city of the bears. And so then I kind of, there's this beautiful spot in the middle of it's in the middle of the city by the river, the beautiful River Aar, which is kind of turquoise because it's all come off of the glacier. So it's just completely magical. And there's a bear garden. Now, it used to be a bear pit. So you can see the bear pit. So Bernese have always been very, very big fans of bears. Obviously, their city is named after bears. They had captive bears in the city for centuries. In fact, when they were invaded by the French, I think it was the French took the bears away from Berne, and it was like a kidnap. The town reacted very, very badly to it because they are this symbol of who they are. And they have this bear gut, so bear pits where they kept live bears, not for baiting or anything, but they were kept in very small places, so it's not great. One of them is now a bar, and it's a really interesting thing if you go and sit in it and you're like, well, this view could get boring pretty quick. It really fine. So, but they still do keep the bears in the pit, but they've now got a tunnel. There's a whole underground section where you just don't see them. They're in there, they're having a sleep, they're doing what bears do. And then there's a garden which runs down to the river, and it's very steep, but it's got lots of trees where bears can hide and bears can climb. And you don't often see them. I only saw them once together. I saw one of them wandering around by himself, and then I saw the family together, because they were cleaning out the indoors bit, so they had to put them out. And that's, everybody was like thrilled that the bears were there. But you go in and there's kids standing there, they're calling for the bears to come out. The city is obsessed with these animals and they love them. There is, I know that keeping animals in captivity is not great. And one Bernese person did say to me, it's not fair that we keep them like this. They are captivated. Captivated? Well, they're captivating. They're captive is what I meant.
Now, it depends if they're allowed to go to the bar or not.
Well, clearly free. But there is a genuine love for these animals in the middle of the city. So I spent a lot of my time just sitting in that part of the city, and then I went off to the museum and sat with the statue. And I was kind of under the impression that everybody else would have done the same. Surely everybody in Berne knows about the bear goddess. No one. Yeah. So I went in, there's a whole gallery on the Celts, and I sat there by the statue, got a little bit tearful because I'm like, oh my God, I've done it. I've actually done a pilgrimage to this statue. Wow, that's quite amazing. And I sat there, and at one point all the lights went off because I was so still and nobody else came in. That was a bit of a shock. And then two women came in and took pictures of things and went out and ignored the statue in the middle. And a gentleman came in and went round, ignored the statue. And I'm like, why are all these people ignoring her? And I never did get to the bottom. They just didn't know. They just didn't know that she was there and that she was important. So I got to kind of sit with Artio and be with that statue for a good hour without anybody trying to throw me out. So that was lovely.
Maybe that was the reason.
There's a strange man hanging around by that statue. Yeah.
At least he didn't get escorted out.
it was for, friends of mine who I talked to in the book, who are Artio devotees, said to me, when you get there, can you get me a postcard? If they do little Artio statues, can you bring it? The only thing there was a book, which was in German. So thankfully, while I was out there, I met some Obod druids who knew I was coming and wanted to talk to me. And one of them very helpfully translated bits of the German book for me. And that's where I got a lot of the information which isn't kind of generally well known about the statues. So a lot of people discuss whether Artio is the human on the statue or whether she's the bear. it's a human, a bear, and a tree. And most people disregard the tree. I kind of argue that I think the tree is a lot more integral to the statue than other people suggest. And that there's the human and the bear. And people argue about, is she the human, is she the bear, is she both? And it was through getting access to that information that I only would have got in the museum that I found out that actually the original statue was of the bear. The bear has been moved, which is why there's damage underneath the plinth. The bear was moved backwards to make way for to the human to go. So for me, Artio is the bear. The human is a later addition, but Artio is the bear.